pursuant to notice issued on May 18, 2022. The committee is meeting to consider 13 legislative measures and 1 postal naming bill. I note the presence of a quorum. I'd certainly like to thank Ranking Member Portman and his staff for working with us to hold this markup to advance critical legislation before us today. But before we begin today, I just want to take a moment to address the gut-wrenching violence we saw yesterday in Uvalde, Texas. It is certainly difficult to put into words how utterly heartbreaking and enraging this horrific shooting was. These were children who had their whole lives ahead of them, and their teachers who dedicated their lives to others. They all should have come home safely last night. Even more tragically, this isn't the first time we've seen this kind of senseless violence play out in space where everyone should feel safe. We cannot accept these repeated shootings as a normal occurrence in our country. We cannot let politics stop us from taking action. And I'm grateful to our committee members who have worked hard on the issue of school safety, and I know that we can continue working together to find solutions to curb this epidemic of gun violence in our country. Before we proceed to consideration of the legislative measures, I would like to recognize Ranking Member Portman, but would ask other members if they wish to make statements to do so after legislation today. We're all on tight schedules. Senator Portman, you're recognized for your comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I join you in expressing our heartfelt concern for those families in Texas and after the horrific shooting. It is difficult to respond to it, except to say that we do need to come together as Republicans and Democrats, and really as a country, and deal with the culture of gun violence. Today, I want to thank you for working with us on a number of these bills. I think we've got a lot of important stuff before the committee today that helps shore up our federal cybersecurity, ensures good governance, and supports communities before disaster strikes. I'm pleased to see, in particular, the Intergovernmental Cybersecurity Information Sharing Act introduced with Chairman Peters before the committee today. This is a bill that increases cybersecurity cooperation between the executive branch and the legislative branch through information sharing of current threats and network vulnerabilities. We all know about this persistent and growing threat, and this bill is another step, in my view, in the right direction to help provide a united defense against these nefarious state and non-state actors. The committee will also review the Improving Government for America's Taxpayer Act. This is a bipartisan bill that streamlines how the Government Accountability Office informs Congress on the state of unimplemented recommendations through an annual report. I think this will be helpful. It provides actionable reports in a consolidated format that will allow Congress to continue to make headway in combating waste, fraud, and abuse and promote good governance. I'm also grateful to Chairman Peters and his staff for working with us on contracting and improvement and oversight, and specifically working with us to reach agreement on the Preventing Organizational Conflicts of Interest in Federal Acquisition Act. Remember, we had a hearing on federal procurement here just a couple weeks ago and learned about how difficult it is to find the workforce and some of the challenges they face in terms of bureaucracy. And I think what we've agreed to is a good bipartisan compromise, and I look forward to supporting this legislation. I believe my colleagues on my side will as well. And again, we all appreciate you working with us on that. I'm also proud to support what's called the Technical Hazards Preparedness and Training Act, along with Senator Sinema. This is important legislation because it expands FEMA's preparedness programming capacity to help more communities to address technological hazards they face from radiological or chemical sources. We've got one in Ohio that needs this legislation badly just to get the best practices and help from the feds. Currently, you can get help if you have a hazard such as a nuclear fuel refinery or chemical plant. Unfortunately, much of the public safety infrastructure in these areas is not equipped to handle an emergency at these and other types of facilities. So we're looking forward to passing this legislation. It will fill a critical need and support public safety officials by providing them preparedness, support, and training for a full range of technical hazards. Finally, I understand that the Improving Intergovernmental Cooperation and Reducing Duplication Act has been removed from the markup. As Chairman knows, I had serious concerns about the legislation because I think it would pit the federal government subsidized by taxpayer dollars against the private sector. I was also concerned about GSA's poor track record on developing in-house technology. Companies in Ohio and elsewhere around the country are not being paid by the federal government for work they've already done because GSA developed software is failing. To that end, Mr. Chairman, I would ask unanimous consent to enter into the record 2 letters of opposition to this bill, one from the Business Software Alliance and the Information Technology Industry Council, and another from the Citizens Against Government Waste.
Without objection, we will so enter.
And again, in the spirit of bipartisanship, I will close by noting that yesterday was the birthday of Zach Schramm on Chairman Peters' staff. Happy birthday, Zach. You don't look a day older. And I appreciate your working with us to ensure the bipartisanship of this committee continues.
Thank you. Thank you, Member Portman. And hopefully we can continue to work together on the bill. I noted the letters that you submitted into the record, but we look forward to having continued conversations with you in the weeks ahead. We will now proceed to consideration of S4166, the Technical Hazards Preparedness and Training Act of 2022. Does any member wish to offer an amendment?
Chair Peters.
Senator Scott.
It's 4166, right? Okay. First, I thank you, Chair Peters, for accepting my amendment for Senate 4057. So on 4166, first I want to say I fully support the program. My concern is that we cannot continue to spend the money we've spent the way we have. We've got $30 trillion in debt, and as we all have seen, inflation is rampant, and it's as a result of massive government spending. Well, I completely support this program. I'd like to propose using money that has already been appropriated to fund the program instead of adding new spending to the country's massive debt. I think this is a common sense, fiscally responsible compromise, and I hope everybody will support it.
Well, thank you, Senator Scott. Thank you for your attention to this legislation. But I'm going to oppose this amendment. It would strike the authorization of appropriations from the underlying bill and inserts language that would divert resources from existing COVID-19 response funding. Currently, FEMA's Technological Hazard Division only operates around Army chemical stockpile sites and communities with nuclear power plants because they're funded through the DOD and user fees from the utility companies. It's my sense and my belief that we should not divert funding from addressing the pandemic. Additionally, this provision creates jurisdictional issues with the Appropriations Committee and would urge a no vote. All those in favor of the Scott amendment will say aye. Opposed will say no.
No.
No. The noes appear to have it. The amendment is not adopted. Is there any further amendments to be offered? Ranking Member Portman.
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment that I'm offering on behalf of Senator Paul, who is not able to be here this morning. The Paul amendment adds a new section to mandate nothing in the bill would diminish or divert funding away from existing preparedness or programming around 2 remaining chemical weapon stockpiles, one of which is located in Kentucky. While the original bill would not diminish the existing preparedness programming, there is no harm in adding a section that makes that explicitly clear. I would hope my colleagues on both sides of the aisle could support this.
Thank you, Member Portman. This amendment makes clear that nothing in the underlying bill shall diminish or divert resources away from the full completion of federally led chemical material storage missions or chemical militarization missions or related activities currently being done by FEMA's Technological Hazards Division. The intent of this bill to expand the work of FEMA's Technological Hazard Division, not divert resources away from its current mission around Army chemical weapon stockpiles. And I think the amendment makes this intention clear, and I'd urge my colleagues to support this amendment. Any other further comments on the amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor will say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendment is adopted.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Langford.
Can I make a very brief comment on this as well? I'm going to support this bill as it comes out of committee. Before it goes actually to the floor, I'd recommend that we add a section into it dealing with the study that the study is not made public. We're asking FEMA to be able to gather all these hazardous locations and basically high-risk locations. If they end up publishing this list and it becomes public in any way, that certainly gives our adversaries a pretty nice list of target locations. Now, none of these locations or few of these locations are often classified, but it's different when we actually gather a full list and then put that list out. So I'd like to just insert language before it gets to the floor to make clear that we work with individual states in these locations, but not publish a large list, or at least keep that classified.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman.
Ranking member.
Happy to work with my colleague from Oklahoma on that, and I think it makes sense.
Is there any further debate or amendments on this bill? Seeing none, the question is on final passage of S. 4166 as amended. All those in favor will say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. A majority of members present having voted in the affirmative, the bill is reported favorably. We will now proceed to consideration of S. 3552, the Targeting Resources to Communities in Need Act of 2022. I ask unanimous consent that the committee consider the Peters substitute amendment to S. 3552 as the underlining bill. Although any comments? All those in favor will say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The substitute is adopted. Does any member wish to offer an amendment?
Chair Peters.
Senator Scott.
Thank you, Chair. First, I want to say I fully support the concept of the bill, but I think we have to understand the effects of this legislation before making it a binding law. Supporting our communities of persistent poverty should be a priority for all of us, but of course we have no idea what the impact of this bill is going to be. I propose first doing a study and seeing the effects before requiring it by law. This bill requires OMB to issue guidelines in a short period of time that could potentially affect the allocation of federal agency funds and programs in my state. And I'm not comfortable with the idea of Florida, the most vulnerable, losing out because we did not do our due diligence. So what I'd like to do is do the study, have congressional review and oversight, and then we can fully understand the scope of the new guidance in our communities. I hope everybody will support this, and I'd ask for a roll call vote.
Thank you, Senator Scott. Senator Scott, I always appreciate your focus on ensuring that taxpayer dollars are targeted to the communities most in need, and we've worked together on legislation related to that and have passed it, and I appreciate it. However, this amendment will pause the work that has happened over the past few years to improve our population and income data and to target resources to areas of persistently high poverty. While all federal programs can be improved, the work of the past administrations and Congress to effectively target necessary benefits to those in the greatest need has demonstrated many successes, and the Scott Amendment would stop that work in its tracks. I look forward to continuing rigorous oversight of this bill and its implementation, which is vital to ensure the goals are being successfully addressed, and I would encourage my colleagues to vote no on the Scott Amendment. A roll call has been ordered for the amendment.
Mr. Chairman, could I speak briefly on the amendment?
Yes.
First, I want
Portman.
to thank Senator Scott for his comments and for his focus on how to help these, persistently poor and needy communities. This legislation, as you know, allows OMB to implement guidance, and this would change basically what we put in this bill into a study. So I'd like to move forward with the bill as it is, so I'll be opposing this amendment. By the same token, we will be doing oversight of this and being sure that the guidance is properly handled by OMB rather than getting ahead of ourselves. But I do think this is it's a good government measure. I think it focuses on making the federal government, frankly, more effective and more efficient.
A roll call vote.
Mr. Chairman,
Sorry,
I'd just like to comment as well, which
Romney.
I intend to support the Scott Amendment. I guess the question is whether we believe that if there's an area of poverty, that just giving them more money is going to solve the problem of poverty, or in some cases whether our programs have locked people into poverty. I question whether simply saying, hey, let's take the programs we have, which are designed in almost all cases to provide additional care for people that are poor, to say, let's see if we can't give it even more money to those that are poor. In some respects, I think that makes it more difficult for individuals and communities to escape poverty. So I think that the logic of studying before we just immediately conclude we should give them more money is an appropriate approach, and therefore I intend to support Senator Scott's amendment.
Thank you, Senator Romney. Any other discussion on Scott Amendment 2? Seeing none, the clerk will call the roll.
Senator Carper.
Carper is a no by proxy.
Senator Hassan. No. Senator Sinema. No. Senator Rosen. No. Senator Padilla. No. Senator Ossoff. No. Senator Portman.
No.
Senator Johnson.
Senator Johnson is yes by proxy.
Senator Paul.
Senator Paul, yes by proxy.
Senator Langford. Senator Romney. Senator Scott. Senator Hawley. Senator Peters.
No.
Mr. Chairman, on the vote of those present, the yeas are 4, the nays are 7. On the vote by proxy, the yeas are 2, the nays are 1. On this vote, the yeas are 6, the nays are 8, and the amendment is not agreed to.
The majority of members present having voted in the negative, the amendment is not reported favorably. Is not adopted. Excuse me. The amendment is not adopted. Is there any further debate or amendment on the bill? Seeing none, the question is on final passage of S 3552 as amended. All those in favor will say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay.
Nay.
The ayes have it. Senator Scott.
Could you record me as a no on 3552?
You will be Senator Scott. Will be a no. Senator
Could
Hawley.
I also be recorded as a no, Mr. Chairman?
Senator Hawley will also be recorded as a no. Senator Romney will be recorded as a no.
I'd like to be recorded as a no.
Senator Langford will be reported as a no. The committee will now proceed to consideration of 11 legislative measures and 1 postal naming bill. I would ask unanimous consent that we consider reporting the following legislation on block. S4000, Intergovernmental Cybersecurity Information Sharing Act, as amended by the Portman-Peters Amendment in the nature of a substitute. S4128, Improving Government for America's Taxpayers Act, as amended by a Portman Amendment in the nature of a substitute. S471, Members of Congress Pension Opt-out Clarification Act. S4057, Strategic EV Management Act of 2022, as amended by Peters Amendment in the nature of a substitute, as modified. S3905, Preventing Organizational Conflicts of Interest in Federal Acquisition Act, as amended by the Peters-Portman Amendment in the nature of a substitute, as modified, and a Hassan Amendment 2, as twice modified. S4167, Federal Agency Performance Act of 2022. S1116, Federal Firefighters Fairness Act, as amended by a modified Carper Amendment in the nature of a substitute. S4205, Planning for Animal Welfare, PAW Act, as amended by the Peters Amendment in the nature of a substitute. S4243, DHS Trade and Economic Security Council Act of 2022, as amended by a Portman Amendment in the nature of a substitute. S4254, Disclosing Federal Influence in Lobbying Act, and H.R. 5343, FEMA Caseworker Accountability Act, as amended by a Peters Amendment in the nature of a substitute. And 1 postal naming bill, H.R. 2142, to designate the facility of the United States Postal Service located at 170 Manhattan Avenue in Buffalo, New York, as the Indiana Hunt Martin Post Office Building. Hearing no objection, all those in favor of the bills read will say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. The majority of members present having voted in the affirmative, the ayes have it. The measures are all reported favorably to the Senate.
Mr. Chairman.
Any member wish to be recognized?
I'd like to be recorded as a no vote on item number 4, S471, Members of Congress Pension Opt-out Clarification Act.
You will be recorded as no, Senator.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Hassan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to thank you and Ranking Member Portman and to your staffs for coordinating this whole markup today. I'm pleased to see that we were able to move forward with Senate Bill 3905, the Preventing Organizational Conflicts of Interest in Federal Acquisitions Act, which I co-sponsored. Federal contractors like McKinsey have acted against the best interest of our country, communities, and citizens. Congress must take additional action to prevent potential conflicts of interest. I'm glad that Chair Peters and Ranking Member Portman incorporated into their bill the language that I advocated for, which will require contractors to continuously disclose whenever they develop conflicts of interest during their work for federal agencies, and not just conflicts that exist at the time that they sign a contract with a federal agency. I'm also glad that the committee adopted my amendment that requires that the federal government update its rules to make it clear that individuals doing contract work for a federal agency should not simultaneously work for a business that is regulated by that same agency. Lastly, I did not offer my other amendment today, which would prevent companies that contract with the federal government from sharing information with private sector clients and ensures that there are strong penalties in place if they do. I understand that we need additional time to review this amendment to ensure that it is appropriately targeted and incorporates technical feedback from OMB. And I look forward to working with you, Mr. Chair, Ranking Member Portman, and the members of this committee on this issue and amendment as the legislation moves forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Heston. Senator Rosen, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman Peters, Ranking Member Portman. Appreciate today's markup. And I was glad to see that we were able to pass the Federal Firefighters Fairness Act. It is critically important legislation to ensure that federal firefighters receive compensation for diseases resulting from their fire protection work. I'm a proud co-sponsor of this bipartisan bill, and I know how important it is to, and among others, wildland firefighters fighting fires in Nevada and throughout the West. And while I was disappointed that we were unable to come to a timely agreement on my amendment to include federal law enforcement officers in this bill, I want to thank Senator Carper, the author of this critical legislation, for his commitment to working with me to address this issue as the bill heads to the floor. Mr. Chairman, I want to thank you, too, for agreeing to work with me and my team to address concerns about the bill raised by law enforcement. We must ensure we protect all emergency personnel who respond to fire emergencies, including law enforcement officers serving our communities at the same sites where firefighters are battling fires and exposed to the very same toxins. I know we'll reach a resolution on this issue, and I appreciate everyone's commitment to do so. Thank you. I yield.
Well, thank you, Senator Rosen, and I certainly want to thank you for your engagement in this issue. And as we have discussed, I assure you that I'll continue to work with you as well as Senator Carper on to explore the opportunity to apply this to law enforcement officers as well. We'll continue to work on this issue. Again, thank you for your leadership. Senator Ossoff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank colleagues in both parties for advancing this important legislation to protect federal firefighters. In North Georgia, Mr. Chairman, those who are tasked with fighting wildfires, for example, in our Chattahoochee-Oconee National Forest, will benefit from this legislation, which will ensure that those who are disabled, injured, or made sick in the line of duty get the support and protection that they need both during their service and in retirement. So again, I want to commend you, Mr. Chairman, thank the ranking member, thank Democrats and Republicans on this committee for coming together in a bipartisan way to look out for federal firefighters in North Georgia and across the country, and I yield.
Thank you, Senator Ossoff. Thank you for your leadership as well. Does any other member wish to make a comment? Senator Padilla.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to take a moment to thank you and Ranking Member Portman for your comments at the beginning of this hearing, not just making note of the items appearing on today's agenda, but the horrific tragedy that took place yesterday in Uvalde, Texas. There's been a lot of chatter, both public and private, in the last day about when incidents, tragedies, mass killings like we saw yesterday will end. I know it's hard, given the political reality of Congress, given the political reality of the Senate right now, with literally a 50-50 makeup, and of course the filibuster rule that makes it even harder for things like common sense gun safety measures to advance. But the country is watching. The country is waiting. The country is wanting a lot of these measures that can reduce the chances of tragedies like this from happening again to advance. We've talked about it, Mr. Chairman, whether it's improving background checks, whether it's banning assault weapons or high-capacity magazines, tackling the issue of ghost guns. I also know it's tricky because some of these issues straddle the jurisdiction of multiple committees. Judiciary Committee is meeting right now. And on that agenda, I'm a member of that committee, on that agenda is the nominee for the head of ATF. And so it's a conversation happening just a few steps away from this committee hearing room. But, Mr. Chairman, this is the committee for Homeland Security and Government Affairs. When people don't know whether they can safely go to the grocery store, our homeland is not secure. When Americans wonder if they're going to be safe at a house of worship, our homeland is not secure. When children, elementary school-aged children, have to go to school in fear of what may or may not happen. You know, I shared in a number of audiences and interviews yesterday, growing up in California, I'm not unfamiliar with practicing fire drills as a kid, and my kids do now as well, or earthquake drills. But when elementary school kids have to practice active shooter drills in schools, it's a sad commentary on our society. And we have ideas that can reduce the chances of future tragedies from happening. I hope this committee, other committees, the Senate as a whole, finds the courage and the backbone necessary to do something that we know can help. Thank you for the opportunity to share a few words, Mr. Chairman.
Well, thank you, Senator Padilla. Thank you for those comments, and thank you for your passion on this incredibly important issue. Any other colleagues wish to be recognized? Seeing no other colleagues who wish to be recognized, I want to take this opportunity to thank everyone on this committee for your cooperation in this very important business meeting.